Matthew this morning. Matthew chapter 2. I do have it up here, but there's Bibles on your tables if you want to follow along. But I'll be reading from Matthew chapter 2, starting in verse 1. It says, "After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, 'Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him.' When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. 'In Bethlehem in Judea,' they replied, 'for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel.' Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, 'Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him.' After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star that they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route." So usually we don't talk about the wise men or the Magi until after Christmas. In fact, we even have a Three Kings Sunday that we celebrate, and that's usually when we talk about them. But for this morning, I wanted to use this as an example for us to talk about, because today is the third week of Advent, and it's also known as the Advent of Joy. And I wanted to use this passage as an example because I think it has several great pieces to it that would be helpful for us to think about this idea of joy today. Because I don't know if we always do joy very well, or at least that's been my experience. I think I've seen this kind of development of what joy is, and it's less about developing true joy in our lives, and instead it kind of becomes this idea of creating this picture that we have, this expectation of the appearance of joy. And we have these ideas of joy. I think especially at Christmas time, we feel this intensely. There's supposed to be these things that happen, decorations that are supposed to look a certain way, friends that are supposed to get together and do certain things, families that are supposed to have certain types of smiles on their face. And this just isn't always the case. And so we struggle with that. In fact, this idea lately, as I've seen so many of these pictures of these happy, smiling families and matching pajamas. You guys seen this too? Yeah, and it's a beautiful picture. It's a fabulous idea, but I don't know if that would be an accurate description of the joy that we're talking about when we talk about joy on this Advent Sunday. It's not that it's a bad thing. I just don't think that is what joy is. The result, when we do think that's what joy is, the result is that we end up with, instead of joy, we end up with this anxiety over trying to meet that expectation, this anxiety of trying to create that picture. And then we end up with guilt when it doesn't look exactly like what we thought it should look like. And that doesn't lead to joy. That's the opposite of joy when we have that experience. So I think one of the first things for us to do is to change that idea, that picture of what joy is. When we talk about joy in the church, when we talk about joy in the Bible, when we talk about joy as this Sunday of Advent, it's not the idea of intense happiness or extreme pleasure. That's not what we talk about. That's sometimes the picture we have. I know for me growing up, if you asked me to describe joy, I would say it's bigger than happiness. That's how I would describe it. But the literal translation from the passage in this morning, when it says they saw the star and they were overjoyed, the literal translation from this is that is used, and the other times that joy is used in the Bible. There's like 57 times, I think, that this word is used in the New Testament. And every time, the literal translation is actually calm delight. Calm delight. That's beautiful. I like that. I like that a lot better than this idea of intensity and joy. And when I think about it, when I imagine it, I suddenly get a very different picture of what joy is. Instead of this intense thing of everything having to be so loud and so full and so busy and all these things, and it's just this mountain of all these expectations, when I think of calm delight, I think of something different. And I ask you to think about that this morning. What comes to mind when you think of calm delight? One of the examples that I think of is the difference between calm delight and intense happiness. If we were to compare those two as our pictures of joy, this is one of the examples that I came up when I was trying to think of how would I explain the difference. So I'm going to use it using food. So the difference is, I very much enjoy McDonald's. I like McDonald's. Does anybody else like McDonald's? I love their fries, their hamburgers, chicken nuggets. It's good. I like McDonald's. I also, one of my other favorite meals, and I don't know how often I make this, but one of my favorite meals is like a roast chicken breast with green beans and potatoes. That's like right up there. That's one of my favorites for sure. Now, I like both meals. I enjoy them very much, but they are very different experiences, correct? The way we feel afterwards, what they do for us, the way that they nourish our bodies are two very different things. And if I was given at any given moment when I'm hungry, I probably am going to want McDonald's more. But the truth is at the end, even while I'm enjoying it, because I really like chicken and green beans too, even while I'm having that, both of them would be wonderful, fabulous experiences. But what would be the result afterwards would be very different. And that's what I think of when I think of this difference between intense happiness and calm delight as descriptions of joy, is kind of the same difference between McDonald's and chicken and green beans. I know that's kind of funny, but. So this idea of calm delight, it changes my idea of what I'm even shooting for when I'm talking about joy, when I'm thinking about joy, when I'm describing what joy even looks like. Idea of calm delight, it changes it, but it also makes it something more attainable. One of the biggest lies I think we tell ourselves is that joy means the absence of pain or frustration or anything bad. I think we tell ourselves this often. We believe that joy only lies in something where there is absolutely no pain near us, there's nothing wrong near us. And when we believe that that's what joy is, joy becomes completely unattainable. It's not something we can do. We are broken people, and we live in a broken world with other broken people. We live with these people, we love people, we have all these relationships and connections with other people who are broken, and their pain affects us too. Their sorrow, their brokenness, it touches our lives too. There is never a moment where brokenness is not touching us in some way, even if we're ignoring it. It is always there. And so if joy can only occur in the absence of that brokenness, in the absence of difficulty, then it would be absolutely ridiculous for God to ask us to rejoice in all things. That's the only time it could happen. It wouldn't be possible, and it would be absolute. Why would God ask that of us then? It also means, why would God tell us that joy is a sign of spiritual health if it's only when there's nothing broken touching us? I see that in the example this morning, this example for the wise men. And it's one of the reasons that I chose this as the example. It says in verse 10, when they saw the star, they were overjoyed. In the King James Version, it says they rejoiced with great joy, indicating that there was this action that came, and then the fullness of great joy that came afterwards. The quite literal translation would state that they chose and acted with fullness of calm delight. That's a fabulous way of thinking what happened. They chose and acted with the fullness of calm delight. The wise men in this situation were not in the absence of difficulty. They were very far from home. They were in a very threatening situation. What was happening in the places around them, and as a result of them going and speaking to King Herod, was absolutely tragic and horrific. We know from the Luke account that they were being lied to and they were being threatened by Herod, and they had to even go a different way home because they were warned supernaturally that they could not return the same way. The response that happened here was something that caused a great deal of pain and anguish. Their lives were most definitely not absent of difficulty. But when they saw that star that stopped and it was over the house that they went into to find the Messiah, they chose and acted with the fullness of calm delight. I think we've all had these moments where joy breaks through even in the dark times, and it lights us up, even if it's just for a moment. And I think that's because that's how strong and powerful true joy is. It can break through those moments, even if we're not choosing and acting on it. Joy can break through, and it can meet us in those times where we feel the most dark. We could go ahead and chalk this up to that. It was just a moment that broke through for the we say three wise men, but for the magi that were there from the east. We could just say that's all it was. Joy broke through for a moment when they got where they were looking for, and that's all it was. That even in the midst of this difficult time, joy sent out this spark. But I think there is more to it than this. I think there is an indication that these experiences, these sparks of joy, they can be longer lasting and they can be more sustaining in our lives. If it is true that we can have and keep calm delight in our lives, even when life is not perfect, what would that mean for us? What would that look like in our lives? And I think the question that we ask ourselves is, how can we possibly make that happen? So let's think about that for a few moments this morning. First, I think we've kind of already talked about one of them, and it's the change of expectation, that changing the picture of what joy might even look like in our lives. But I think it's also adding in the idea that joy is not the absence of pain, and it's not ignoring it. That would be the easy thing to try to do. We would never successfully do it, but I think we could try to do it. I can't wait for my life to be perfect, to have joy, so I'm just going to ignore the pain and difficulty and pretend it isn't there. I don't think that's what this means either. I don't think that's what God is asking for us when he's asking us to rejoice, or when he's asking us to have calm delight as a fruit of a spiritual health. Grief and mourning are legitimate things. We are told to mourn with those who mourn and weep with those who weep. That would not be something that God would ask for us to do if we were to just ignore the sad things that happen. We would not be told to ignore it as we're being told to walk alongside it. But there is a big difference between mourning and grieving and then wallowing in pity. And I'm going to be careful here because I don't want to criticize anybody who is experiencing grief and walking through grief. But I will give a personal example. There's been times where I have experienced loss, things that were sad and upsetting. It doesn't always have to be something dramatic because we all experience loss at some times, and it can be loss in many ways. It can be something that we've lost, as in actually lost a person who we can no longer be with. It can be loss in the loss of a relationship or the change of a relationship to no longer be something that it once was. Can also be the loss of an opportunity or something that we were looking forward to. I'm kind of being vague on purpose because there's just too many shapes and details that go into the types of loss that we can experience. We don't have to have the details to understand what going through that means. And in that space of loss, we can mourn and we can grieve until we get to a place of acceptance. But sometimes that's not what we do. It's very much like anger, where if we hold on to anger and we have this anger, we have choices. We can either let it heal and lead us to forgiveness, or we can allow that anger to decay into a source of bitterness for us that takes root in our lives. The same thing happens with guilt. We feel guilty over something that happened, and we can allow that to either lead us to healing and renewed energy and vigor for life, or we can allow that guilt to decay into shame that's a burden and weighs us down and doesn't let us go forward. Grief is the same thing. We can mourn and we can grieve and get to a place of hopeful acceptance, or we can allow it to decay into a place of self-pity and wallowing in this place of torment about ourselves. I've done that many times where I have allowed sadness to morph into this area of self-pity. But the truth is I can be sad, I can mourn, I can weep, but it doesn't mean that I have to let it morph into this area of feeling sorry for myself. I don't have to go into that space of feeling like, why should I have to deal with this? Or this isn't fair, I didn't cause this. I don't have to go into that space of, I don't want to deal with this. Because those are not moments of genuine grief. Those are moments of feeling sorry for ourselves. It's kind of like throwing a temper tantrum. It's no longer grieving. It's no longer working through healing to get to a place of acceptance. It is now no longer about sadness and loss. Instead, it's just feeling sorry and sadness for myself, for the things that I think I deserve instead, for feeling like I shouldn't have to experience difficulty. But this isn't true. That's not true. That's never something that I was promised. I was never promised that everything would be easy and wonderful, even if I made the right choices. We have only been promised hope and joy, even in the midst of those places. And we can do that. We all have those moments, and I'm not wanting to harp or make anybody feel bad or guilty, because that's just leading down that more decay. But I do think it's good for us to go ahead and recognize those spaces in our lives where we're doing this. Because in those spaces, if we are stuck feeling sorry for ourselves, joy has little chance of flourishing. There's little hope for calm delight in the space when we're feeling sorry for ourselves. And this idea of hope flourishing, that's what it is. It's something that we choose and act on. And if we have hope, we can let that true joy grow in something. The calm delight can bloom in our lives. Beth Moore recently had this statement, and I wanted to share it this morning. It says this: let's try to hang in there today. I mean, we can't be mad and offended, shocked and insulted every minute of the day. At some point, we've got to choose a little joy and peace of mind in Jesus. And I liked that because she is being a little facetious, right? She's poking fun at the fact that we allow ourselves to think that despair is somehow a virtue. That as long as I'm mad about the right things, then it means I'm good. We do that, right? But then she has this phrasing and this idea of we choose a little joy. That phrase right there is a sermon in itself. We can choose a little joy. In fact, we've got to choose a little joy and peace of mind in Jesus. Because there is a choice. Even in this passage from this morning, the little words that I've already said is rejoiced, verb, rejoiced, and it's an action. It was something they chose to do, and then with great joy. It's the choice and action to go with full calm delight. I'm not suggesting that we ignore sadness or that we create this unrealistic picture of a life that is absence of difficulty, but there is a suggestion that we can choose and bring about joy. So how do we do that? I think we can see this when we consider that this joy talked about in this Matthew passage, the one that the Magi experienced, the one that when they found the star had stopped over the house where Mary and the little boy was living in Bethlehem, that is the same joy that Paul talks about as a fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5. The spiritual fruit, where Paul suggests that if you have a life that is full and healthy, a spiritual life that is actually producing fruit, then you will see love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control. If you want to know if someone is spiritually healthy, it's not about how many verses they can quote. It's not about how many church functions they attend or how much money they give or what good things they do. It is, does their lives that have full of these things? Joy is a better indication of spiritual health than any of those other markers that we usually put above it. Joy is. Joy is bigger proof of spiritual health than all the things we normally suggest show a virtuous life. Joy, calm delight, even in the midst of struggle. We talked about this before when I've talked about the fruit of the Spirit, and I'm going to talk about it again. The fruit of the Spirit aren't things we do. We don't go and do peace. We don't go and do goodness. We don't go and do joy. That's a different thing. That's religion talking. That's not what it is. It's not what we go and do. Instead, it is a byproduct and a result. It is the fruit of what we have developed in our lives. The life we live produces joy. When we grow things in a garden, we cultivate, we nurture, we create a space where something, a plant or something that we want to grow, it will grow and it will thrive. And when we're doing that, we're taking care of it, and then we're eliminating any of the things that threaten it. I love that this is the picture of how Jesus describes what a vital spiritual life is. Because it's the exact same thing with spiritual fruit. We create a space where that fruit can thrive, where it can grow. We nurture it, and then we eliminate any of the things that threaten to kill it or choke it off. That means we practice things that result in calm delight. I think that's where we start. That's where we can start even today. What are the things that when you practice them, it results in calm delight in your life? Some people, it might be having coffee with a good friend, somebody that builds you up and encourages you and calls you on stuff that you don't necessarily want to hear. That can result in calm delight. Maybe it's laughing so hard with your family over something silly that happened. That can result in calm delight. Maybe it's finding a quiet space outside without your phone. Maybe it's listening to a certain song, maybe it's a prayer walk, maybe it's something, just those things that result in that calm delight. Indulge in them. That's not something that we talk a lot about as being a virtuous thing or a righteous thing to seek after, is indulging in those things. Indulgence is something that we think of as something we should avoid, and it's something that's negative and result in something that's bad. But this is what I'm saying. I'm saying indulge in those things that result in the sign of spiritual health. It is a spiritual practice to do those things. Cultivate joy by finding and practicing the things that bring about calm delight, and ruthlessly eliminate the things that destroy it. This is kind of a radical thing of thinking, but I'm really not kidding about it. If we're serious about wanting to have joy in our lives that's so full and so vibrant, then we need to look at those things that kill it. So if watching the news kills your calm delight, don't watch the news. If spending the evening on the phone with somebody that always stresses you out, if that's something, don't do it. Don't do it. God can send somebody else to talk to that person. Doesn't have to be you. If it's going to kill that calm delight, it's going to cause it to not thrive in your life, don't do it. If spending the time scrolling through your phone and completely ignoring anybody else in your life, if that's going to kill your calm delight, don't do it. Don't do it. If cleaning your house and meeting all the obligations and expectations of what you were supposed to do, even trying to make Christmas look like that picture, if putting your kids in matching pajamas and trying to make them smile for a picture is going to kill your calm delight, then don't do it. Because these are the things that are costing you more than you know. Joy at Christmas is a possible thing. Joy in your life, no matter what the circumstances, is a possible thing. Because joy at Christmas is the promise of not just something that we're supposed to chase and never find. It is the promise that Jesus said he would bring, the fullness of vitality, health, and calm delight to our lives. Jesus is the beginning of true joy, and we can find that fullness in him. And I like how the prophet Isaiah talks about this kind of joy, this kind of picture of calm delight. And I want to close with sharing this with you. Even the wilderness and desert will rejoice in those days. The desert will blossom with flowers. Yes, there will be an abundance of flowers and singing and joy. The deserts will become as green as the Lebanon mountains, as lovely as Mount Carmel's pastures and Sharon's meadows, for the Lord will display his glory there, the excellency of our God. With this news, bring cheer to all discouraged ones. Encourage those who are afraid. Tell them, be strong, fear not, for your God is coming to destroy your enemies. He is going to save you. And when he comes, he will open the eyes of the blind and unstop the ears of the deaf. The lame man will leap up like a deer, and those who could not speak will shout and sing. Springs will burst forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. The parched ground will become a pool with springs of water in the thirsty land. Where desert jackals lived, there will be reeds and rushes. and a main road will go through the once deserted land. It will be named the Holy Highway. No evil-hearted man may walk upon it. God will walk there with you. Even the most stupid cannot miss the way. No lion will lurk along its course, nor will there be any other dangers. Only the redeemed will travel there. Those, the ransomed of the Lord, will go home along the right road to Zion, singing the songs of everlasting joy. For them all sorrow and all sighing will be gone forever. Only joy and gladness will be there. Please join me as we close with prayer. God, thank you for this season, not the season of busyness and requirements and obligations, but the season of hope, the season of realizing what it means that you came to earth, what that means for us, God, that when everybody else is looking to take, when everything else in this whole world is asking to take, you came to give. And you came to give with both hands. You came to give life and more life, a fullness of life beyond anything we can think of. You came to give us love and mercy. You came to be the sacrifice that we could not be for ourselves. You came to bring us light in the darkness. And you came to bring us joy, calm delight in the midst of even the darkness and the suffering. God, you came to offer us this, and not just offer it to stay in that place, but you are offering us the promise of we will get to the point where there will be only joy. There will only be calm delight. There will be nothing that will be able to deter us from that. God, we pray as we go through this season, through this time, you will give us the strength to ruthlessly eliminate any of those things that kill that calm delight, and to indulge gladly without any kind of hesitation, to indulge gladly in the things that bring us calm delight, and to know that that is good for us, that that is good for our spiritual lives and for serving and worshiping and honoring you. We pray that we truly value joy for the goodness that it is, that we see joy as being the measure of health, that we lift it up as something, and that it is not that empty version that is unsatisfying and unnourishing, but it is the full version that nourishes us and sustains us. We pray this in your name. Amen.